Zaire, 1960. After decades of Belgian colonial rule, the Republic of the Congo becomes independent. For the first time, Congolese citizens prepare to govern themselves. At the center of this historic moment stands Patrice Lumumba, the country's first democratically elected prime minister. Many see him as a symbol of national dignity and hope. Lumumba believes independence must be meaningful. Political freedom, in his view, must include control over land, mineral resources, and national decision-making. His message resonates with ordinary citizens who want economic as well as political sovereignty. This means that the Congolese people will now control their land, their resources, and their government without external influence. But it worries powerful groups both inside and outside the country. At the independence ceremony on June 30th, 1960, King Baudouin of Belgium praises the colonial administration.
L'indépendance du Congo constitue l'aboutissement de l'œuvre conçue par le génie du roi Léopold II, entreprise par lui avec un courage tenace et continuée avec persévérance par la Belgique. Elle marque une heure décisive dans les destinées, non seulement du Congo lui-même, mais je n'hésite pas à l'affirmer, de l'Afrique tout entière.
Lumumba responds with an unscripted speech describing forced labor, racial discrimination, and exploitation under colonial rule. His remarks surprise international observers and signal that Congo's leadership will not simply endorse its colonial past.
Battant de l'indépendance, aujourd'hui victorieux, je vous salue au nom du gouvernement congolais. À vous tous, mes amis, qui avez lutté sans relâche à nos côtés, je vous demande de faire de ce 30 juillet 1960.
Although the independence of the Congo is being proclaimed today, no Congolese will ever forget that independence was won in struggle. It was filled with tears, fire, and blood. We have experienced forced labor in exchange for pay that did not allow us to satisfy our hunger. Morning, noon, and night, we were subjected to insults and blows because we were Negroes. Who will ever forget the shootings that killed so many of our brothers, or the cells into which many who no longer wish to submit to the regime of injustice, oppression, and exploitation were thrown? Today, the Republic of the Congo has been proclaimed, and the future of our beloved country is now in the hands of its people. I call on all Congolese citizens, men, women, and children, to set themselves resolutely to the task of creating a national economy and ensuring our economic independence.
Lumumba talks about the violence, exploitation, and suffering that happened under colonial rule. Many African countries were going through similar struggles, and he felt it was wrong to work with the oppressors and stay quiet while his fellow Africans were suffering under different colonial powers. The British, for instance, were setting up concentration camps in Kenya to hold the Mau Mau. The Mau Mau uprising challenges British colonial authority, who were a group of freedom fighters that eventually drove the British out, allowing Kenya to become independent. In Ghana, independence has already been achieved. Lumumba's position reflects a broader demand for self-determination throughout Africa. Within weeks of independence, instability begins. The force publique mutinies. Belgian troops return without formal authorization. Feeling abandoned, Lumumba looks elsewhere for support of removing the Belgian troops. He appeals politically to African leaders for support. But newly independent neighbors have little to no military support. Katanga, the mineral-rich province, declares secession under Moïse Tshombe with Belgian support. Lumumba requests assistance from the United Nations. Peacekeepers arrive, but they do not intervene to end the secession. Isolated, Lumumba seeks logistical support from the Soviet Union. During the Cold War, this decision raises concern in Western capitals. This worried the United States and Belgium, fearing that Congo would ally with the Soviet Union, which could mean losing access to important minerals. The CIA saw Patrice Lumumba as a threat during the Cold War because they believed he might align the Democratic Republic of the Congo with the Soviet Union. Declassified files show the CIA intended to remove him from power, including backing his political rivals. Declassified records now show how the CIA developed poison, including toxic substances meant for food or personal items like toothpaste, and delivered it to their station in the Democratic Republic of the Congo with orders to use it against him. Political divisions intensify. President Joseph Kasavubu attempts to dismiss Lumumba in September 1960. Lumumba rejects the dismissal as unconstitutional. The country enters a leadership crisis. Belgium initially didn't view him as a threat, but they certainly did now. This wasn't because he was violent, but because he refused to be controlled. Within the Congolese government, political unity crumbled, allies became rivals, and trust ceased to exist. Members of parliament and regional leaders who had initially supported Lumumba's government were pressured by both Belgium and the United States to oppose him. President Joseph Kasavubu, who had previously collaborated with Lumumba before and after independence, attempted to remove him from power. The betrayal became public when the president announced on the radio that Patrice Lumumba was no longer the country's prime minister. Lumumba rejected this, but days later, Colonel Joseph Désiré Mobutu, who had also supported and protected Lumumba, orchestrated a military takeover. Once appointed and trusted by Lumumba, turned against Lumumba and seized control, becoming the country's true power, despite not being president. On September 14, 1960, Lumumba is effectively removed from power. Lumumba is placed under house arrest and cut off from supporters. In November 1960, he attempts to travel to Stanleyville to regroup with allies. He is captured by forces loyal to Mobutu, publicly mistreated, and imprisoned. On January 17, 1961, Lumumba is transferred to Katanga. Belgian officers are present during his detention.
Bill a prisoner. The former Congo premier, who was captured when he fled inland, no longer wears the tuft of whiskers on his chin that helped to identify him. His arrest provoked several clashes between Lumumba followers and Congolese army troops. But Congo's strongman, Colonel Joseph Mobutu, shown as he watches Lumumba arrive, says he is prepared to put down any uprising. At the same time, the Soviet Union has been demanding Lumumba's release and immediate talks at the United Nations. Mobutu enjoys the sight of Lumumba being tied up more firmly for transfer to the garrison town of Teesville. A soldier tries to stuff into Lumumba's mouth a crumpled speech asserting his claim to power. The former premier shows no emotion. It may be the end of a chapter, but not yet the end of the Congo story.
That evening, he is executed by a firing squad. His body is dismembered and dissolved in acid to prevent a burial site from becoming a symbol of resistance. For decades, official responsibility is denied. Lumumba's removal involves multiple actors. Congolese political rivals oppose him. The army enforces his isolation. Belgian officials are later linked to the circumstances of his death. Western governments, concerned about Soviet influence, view his leadership with suspicion. Lumumba serves as prime minister for less than 3 months. His policies are never fully implemented. In 1965, Mobutu formally consolidates power and later renames the country Zaire. He rules for more than 3 decades with support from Western governments during the Cold War. Elections weaken, opposition is restricted, and corruption expands. Despite vast mineral wealth, much of the population remains impoverished. Lumumba's removal signals that nationalist leaders operating outside Cold War alignments face significant risks. Patrice Lumumba was a nationalist leader navigating a volatile international environment. In 2001, a Belgian parliamentary inquiry acknowledges moral responsibility in the events surrounding his death. In 2022, Belgium returns a tooth identified as Lumumba's only known remains to his family. His legacy continues to raise questions about sovereignty, foreign intervention, and the meaning of independence. Lumumba's time in office was brief, yet historically significant. His leadership represented a vision of political and economic independence. Congo's experience in 1960 demonstrates that independence can be achieved formally, yet challenged in practice. His story remains central to understanding post-colonial Africa and the global tensions of the Cold War era. See you on the next one.